Okay, so we're going to be doing chapter 20, the Quadratics chapter in my new book, Overcoming ACT Math. If you're interested in getting it, it's available on Amazon. The details are in the description, and make sure you pay attention to the description of this video over time because I might add extra tips that I think of or recommendations for extra problems as time progresses. So, really quick, I just want to do a brief summary about what a quadratic is and what you need to know before doing this chapter. So a quadratic is just basically, the easiest way to think about it is something that has the biggest degree being the x squared. Like the biggest thing is x squared, not x cubed, not x to the fourth, not x. It's that the biggest one is x squared. And it's in this format. So whatever the number is that's being multiplied by x squared is referred to as a in a bunch of the formulas. Whatever is being multiplied by x is referred to as b in all the formulas, and whatever is the number on by itself over here is referred to as c in the formulas. So if they ever ask you for sum of solutions, you're going to use the formula negative b over a. Again, that just refers to what I just described as a and b. And then to find out how many solutions something has, you're going to do something called the discriminant formula, which looks like this, b squared minus 4ac. Now, what you get from that, if it's a positive, it means that there's two real solutions. If it's a negative number, it's no real solutions. If it's 0, it means you have one real solution. And then we have our x min and max. So when it's asking you for the minimum maximum value, it's asking you for the y min and max. But if it's asking you for the x value that you have a minimum or maximum at, then it's asking you for the x min or max, which would be equal to negative b over 2a. Again, b and a refer to this right over here. And that's also equal to h in the vertex. So it's equal to, you can think of it as two things if you want to, but they're essentially synonymous with each other. So then we have the minimum value or maximum value, and that's going to be, all you have to do is really plug in what you get for the x, minimum and max, and you find the y. This is also equivalent to k in the vertex form. And this is the vertex form equation right over here. And then we have the axis of symmetry formula as well. Now, if you want some practice before you head into this, doing the problems on your own, if you have this book, then I suggest you might want to watch the SAT version and then come and do this one after so that you can just see some example problems. So let's go to number 1. Given that the root of a parabola the roots of a parabola are 2 and negative 7, then the equation of the parabola could be, so the roots, or this is also referred to sometimes as the zeros, are going to be your x-intercepts essentially. So this is saying that we have 2 points. We have 2, 0 and negative 7, 0 on this parabola that should work in these equations. Now, another way that you can think about it is whenever they tell you the roots are the zeros, that should just have the opposite number as part of your factors. So what I mean by that is, you know it's a parabola, so you know it's going to be x plus or minus something times x plus or minus something if you factored it. And the opposite of the root goes inside of the factors. So the opposite of 2 is negative 2, and the opposite of 7 is going to be positive 7 plus 7. So then you could just FOIL this out. Remember, FOIL it's an acronym that stands for what you're multiplying, and then that's going to tell you what you have as your equation. So F stands for I multiply the first things, x times x, that's x squared. O stands for I multiply the outer things, 7 times x, that's 7x. I stands for I multiply the inner things, negative 2 times x, negative 2x. And then the L stands for multiplying the last things, negative 2 and positive 7, which is going to be negative 14. Then I just combine these terms right there, and that's going to give me 5x. And then I copy down everything else in my equation. And then I have what my equation is. So that would be letter choice D. Thank you guys for the likes and shares. So let's go to, let me get water really quick. Okay, let's go to number 2. So Jason is using the equation right here to figure out the height of a ball off the ground t seconds after it has been tossed. Which of the following could represent the time that the ball hits the ground? So h of t is the height it is off the ground. So if it's hitting the ground, then there's no height off the ground. It's equal to 0. So all of this should be equal to 0. Oh, and this is the old version. I corrected that in the new version, but I forgot to do that before I started the video. So we have this equation all equaling to 0 because it's the time that it hits the ground. So we need to find what t is when h of t is 0. So sometimes you might want to like factor this out, but I see in the answer choices that there's some radicals in there, so that indicates usually that you're not going to be able to nicely factor this out, and you're better off just doing quadratic formula, so that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to say negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. That's the quadratic formula, and your a, b, and c are just going to be the things that are multiplied by each of your terms. So negative 2 times t squared, so the negative 2 is going to be your a. Whatever's multiplied by t is going to be your b, and the number floating by itself is your c. So I'm going to just plug each of those values into the formula. So I'm going to get negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 8 squared minus 4 times negative 2 times 3. And then I'm going to put that all over 2 times negative 2. So now I'm going to start by just multiplying and subtracting what's in the parentheses right there, or not parentheses, inside the radical, I mean. So then when I do that, that's going to be the square root of 88. And then that's going to be all over negative 4. So then now I'm going to simplify the square root right here. So 88 I know is the same thing as saying 4 times 22. So when I have those factors, I see that 4 is a perfect square, so I can take out what the square root of 4 is, which is 2. So I can say negative 8 plus or minus 2 root 22 over negative 4. So now I see it's probably going to be answer choice F or G. But it looks a little bit different. That's because they're dividing by the greatest common factor, which in this case would be 2. 2 can go into each of these evenly. So if I divide by 2, I'm going to get that this is negative 2. And then this is going to be negative 4. And then this is just going to cancel out to 1, so I just have root 22. So now it's negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 22 over negative 2. Now, the plus or minus here means that we can either add the root 22 or we can subtract the root 22. So we have to see in the context of our problem what might be the best strategy here, because remember, we're talking about time. In a lot of these, you'll have two solutions, but when they give you context like this where it's time, you know that time can't be negative. Like you can't have negative 5 seconds. That doesn't make sense. So we have to make sure that, that each of these are going to be a positive time or give us a positive time. So if we were to add root 22 to this, we do negative 4 plus root 22 over negative 2. And again, you would have your calculator on the exam, or you could just guesstimate, because you could say, okay, I know my perfect square of root 16 is equal to 4, and I know my perfect square of root 25 is equal to 5, so it has to be a number between 4 and 5. You can do that too, but again, you have your calculator, so why not use that? So when you do this, you can see that you're going to get a negative value, and you can't have a negative time, so it's not going to be that. So when you use the plus version, that just creates an impossible answer. So now we're going to do the minus version. So we're going to say I have minus 4 minus root 22 over negative 2. And then when you plug this into the calculator, you're going to see that this gives you a positive answer. So this is the correct answer because we can have a positive time. That makes sense. So it's going to be G. Thank you for liking and sharing the live, guys. So then let's go to the next one. And it says for number 3 on a recent math quiz, Aisha had to determine the number of real solutions for the equation, this one right here. She decided to solve this problem by using the discriminant formula. Aisha's work is shown below. If she made an error, then what error did she make? Okay, so let's see. We know the discriminant formula is b squared minus 4ac. Okay. So let's see, we know the discriminant formula is b squared minus 4ac, and we have to set the quadratic equal to 0 before we can use that formula, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to subtract 7 from each side. It's going to cancel out there, and then I'm going to get x squared minus 4x minus 7 is equal to 0. My a is going to be the number being multiplied by x squared, so my a is 1. my B is going to be -4, and my C is going to be -7. So if I were to plug that into the formula, I would have -4 squared minus 4 times 1 times -7. So now I'm going to compare that to what Aisha got. So that's the same. This part's the same, but this part with the 7 and the -7, that's different. So that's the error that we need to find. So that would be B. Aisha should have used -7 instead of 7 in the term right over here. Okay, and yeah, I said you don't need a calculator necessarily, but this is the ACT, so like, why not just use it? And then let's go to number 4. Which of the following is true about the parabola? So we know if it opens up or down based off of what it's being multiplied right here, if it's a positive or a negative number. So this is a positive number, so that means it opens upward. What it means by that is it's one of the ones that look like this. Opening downwards would mean it looks like this. So it opens upward, that checks out. It does not have an axis of symmetry. So to find the axis of symmetry, what we would do is we would say that x is equal to h, which is equal to the -b over 2a. That's the formula for it. Like the x min or max is the same thing as saying like the h, the x value of the vertex, which is equal to -b over 2a. So if we look at the quadratic, our a is going to be 3, but there's no term being multiplied by x, so technically b is equal to 0 here. So this is going to be equal to just 0 over 2 times 3, which is just 0. So there is an axis of symmetry, it's just equal to 0, so not that one. And then we have number 3, its vertex is -1, 0. Again, this is the x value of the vertex that we just figured out, and that's supposed to be 0, so it can't have -1 as that value. So that's wrong. So it would just be number 1 only, F. Okay, let's keep going to number 5. Which of the following is BC for the parabola shown below? So BC is this point right over here. So they love testing this in various different ways, but just remember on exam day that the vertex is going to be halfway the x-intercepts. Hold on one second. So we want this to be halfway in between. So we're going to use the midpoint formula to our advantage here because this would be in the middle of the two x values here. So we could say that b plus 2 divided by 2 is equal to 0.5. Again, this is just that this is equaling the midpoint, which is 0.5. So just midpoint formula is all I'm doing there. And then I'm going to multiply each side by 2 to solve for what b is. So when I multiply each side by 2, I get this. Then I'm going to subtract 2 on each side to get that b is equal to -1. Now I have b is -1. And I can just stop there because there's only one of answer choice option that says that. Number 6, what is the vertex of the parabola? So the vertex of the parabola, so let's think about the format that we're used to for vertex form, where it looks like this, where h comma k is your vertex. So this looks a little different than this, and the difference is that y is by itself in the formula. So we want to get y by itself in this equation up here. We're going to do that by adding 8 to each side, because then it'll cancel out over here and move over here. So then we're going to get y is equal to x minus 1 squared plus 8. Now remember, this is in the format now that we want, and h comma k is the vertex, so that means that we want to have 1 comma 8 as our vertex, so F. Do you do reading for college? Yes, I do. So then let's go to number 7. What is the vertex for this right here? Okay, so for this equation, let's do the x min and x min or max formula. So the x min or the x max can also be thought of as h in your vertex form. Whichever way you want to think about it, it's synonymous. It's just a different way of describing it. And that's going to be equal to -b over 2a when you're talking about A and B in the context of your quadratic that you have right here. So A is always the number being multiplied by x squared, B is the number being multiplied by x, C is the number that's by itself. So here it would be negative 4 over 2 times 2, so negative 4 over 4, which is just going to be negative 1. So we see that only one choice has that, so it would be A. Now, if for some reason, like let's say that you had an option of negative 1 comma 7, and you had to determine is it A or C, what you would do in that case is you just plug in negative 1 for x and solve for y. And that would tell you that negative 7 was supposed to be your y. So let's see. It says, what are the roots for this right here? Okay, so then let's do number 8. What are the roots for this right here? So roots again are just zeros. So I see that I have some like decimal format, so this is going to require a quadratic formula. And so quadratic formula says that this is, when we're talking about the quadratic formula here, this is going to be A, this is going to be B, and this is going to be C. So A is, we're just going to plug in like 5 for A, negative 3 for B, and negative 8 for C is all we're doing here. So I'm going to say that this is 3 plus or minus the square root of negative 3 squared minus 4 times A is 5 and C is negative 8. And we're going to put that all over 2 times 5. Okay, so then now what we're going to do is we're just going to simplify everything inside the square root, and then we're going to add and then subtract it as well, what's inside the square root, and then divide by 10. So we would get, when we plug that all in, it's going to be, let's see, that's going to be 13, because this is root 169. So it's going to be 3 plus or minus root 13 divided by 10. I'm sorry, not root 13. 13 is what I meant. It's root 169, and then when you simplify that, that's 13. So then it's going to be, if we use the plus version, 3 plus 13 is going to be 16 over 10. And then that's just going to be equal to 1.6. And then if we use the minus version, we're going to say that that's 3 minus 13, which is going to be negative 10 over 10, which is just equal to negative 1. So it's 1.6 and negative 1. So it's going to be G. Okay, so let's go to number 9. If the following equation, this one, applies to all values of x, what is the value of c? Okay, so right here we have 2 terms plus or minus in parentheses times 2 terms plus or minus in parentheses. So this indicates that I have to FOIL. That's an acronym that stands for what we need to multiply. So F is for first, so we multiply the first things. So 3x times bx is going to be 3bx squared. And then O stands for outer, so 3x times negative 7 is going to be negative 21x. I stands for inner, so negative 2 times bx, negative 2bx. And then we have the last terms, negative 2 times negative 7 is going to be positive 14. And that's going to all equal, we didn't do anything to the right-hand side, so we're just copying down everything that's on the right-hand side. And then what we're going to do now is, what you should know is that the left equals the right, essentially, which you see that in the equation, but a lot of people forget this. So what that means is on the left, whatever's being multiplied by x squared has to equal what's being multiplied by x squared on the right, if they're equal. So that means that 3b has to equal 21, because that's what's being multiplied on the left by x squared, that's what's being multiplied on the right by x squared. So if we divide by 3 on each side, we're going to get that b is equal to 7. So we know what b is, and that's going to help us with our next part, because this is where it gets a little trickier. So we have 2 things being multiplied by x there, and 1 thing being multiplied by x on the right. What you do in this case is you factor out the x, and then you say that's negative 21 minus 2b. All of that is what's being multiplied by x. So now you have 1 thing being multiplied by x on the left, and 1 thing being multiplied by x on the right that you can set equal to each other. So now you can say negative 21 minus 2b is equal to negative c. We know what b is, so we can plug that in for b. And we can say that's equal to negative c. So then that's going to be negative 21 minus 14, so that's going to be negative 35 is equal to negative c. So then you just divide by the negative, or you can think of canceling it out on each side, whatever, like however you think about it is fine. So then C is equal to 35, so it would be D. I'm glad that this way is easier for you guys to explain. Yeah, I tried to make it easier than how teachers make you learn it, so that's good. So number 10 is if a parabola passes through the x-axis at 1, 0 and -9, 0, then what is its axis of symmetry? Okay, so remember, the vertex is going to be halfway in between the x-intercepts, because if you think about it, like, let's say we have a parabola. These are the x-intercepts, right, of your parabola. This is just any parabola. It's not the specific one they're talking about. The vertex is going to be halfway in between the x-intercepts there. So we can just use midpoint formula to find out what the axis of symmetry is, because the axis of symmetry goes through the vertex. It's right here. The axis of symmetry is just x is equal to the h value of the vertex, which is written as h comma k. So then let's go and do our midpoint formula to help us out with this problem. So we're going to say that x is equal to 1 plus -9, because that's our x-intercepts that we're talking about, divided by 2. And that's going to be equal to -8 over 2, which is equal to -4. So x is equal to -4. That's our axis of symmetry. Okay, and they would not accept that answer if you circle like that. I work as a test checker. Yeah, they definitely wouldn't, because I'm using pen, first of all. So you need a number 2 pencil on test day. And you would need to bubble it all in appropriately on a bubble sheet. They don't check the actual book. They check your bubble sheet. So then let's go to number 11. So number 11 says v is less than 0, and we have all of this. What is the value of u minus v? I like to always underline these, because a lot of the times people find what like u is or what v is, and they put that as the answer instead of u minus v. So that's why I'm underlining that. And what we have here is just a foiling problem again, because 3x minus v squared is the same thing as saying this. So we have to FOIL. So we need to copy down the left-hand side and then FOIL the right. So if we FOIL the right-hand side, 3x times 3x is, yeah, you always hate when they use u and v, yeah. 3x times 3x is going to be 9x squared. 3x times negative v is going to be negative 3xv. And then negative v times 3xv is going to be negative 3xv again. And then negative v times negative v is going to be positive v squared. I should have actually written I'm going to change it to write the v's in front, because it doesn't matter what order you multiply in, just to make it look easier. So if I combine my like terms here, negative 3 and negative 3, that's going to be negative 6. And then I'm going to rewrite it with the v in front just so it looks a little nicer, because it doesn't matter what order you multiply in, so that it looks more like the left. So then we are going to now say we know that the left has to equal the right. So that means that the 16 has to equal the v squared. So v has to be equal to plus or minus 4. But they told us that v is less than 0, so that means that v is equal to negative 4 if we follow that rule that they gave us. So we know that v is negative 4. And remember, left is equal to right, so that means that u has to be equal to negative 6v. So u is equal to negative 6v. We know that v is negative 4, so we could say it's equal to negative 6 times negative 4, which is equal to positive 24. And then we could say that we're doing u minus v. So u minus v is going to be equal to 24 minus negative 4. So then if we add those up, we just get 28, so it would be C. And if you're confused and need to watch this slower, just remember these go up on YouTube later, so you can slow down the speed on YouTube to help you out. And also, this would be similar to one of the problems we did earlier, so it might be easier to like look at this problem first and then see me do this problem, number 11. Negative 28 is not true, no, because minus a minus is a plus. Okay, so let's go to number 12. Oh, hold on. I forgot. I'm supposed to be checking that my answer key is all correct, so this is all part of edit. So hold on. Let me just check that that page is all good. Yes. Okay, good. Okay, so then let's go to number 12. So number 12, thanks for liking and sharing the live, guys. So look at the negative in the bracket. In the bracket, what do you mean? The negative in the bracket, negative times a negative is a positive, so positive 24. So this was initially 24 minus, because it's u minus v, so 24 minus whatever v is. We know v is negative 4. So minus a minus is a plus. So that equals 28. Okay, let me just grab water. So let's go to number 12. Which of the following points lies on the axis of symmetry for the parabola? Okay, so axis of symmetry is just x is equal to h, where h comma k is the vertex. So we could say that this is also equal to our x min or max. So that formula is negative b over 2a is how you find that. So remember let's start with a. A is the number that's being multiplied by x squared. B is the number that's being multiplied by x. So b is technically negative 1. C is the number that stands by itself. So if we want to find the axis of symmetry, we would say that x is equal to, and the negative of negative 1, which we could just have said it was 1, but I just want people to see it so they don't ask me later and get confused. So we're taking the negative of b, so the negative of negative 1, over 2 times 1. So the negative of negative 1 is a positive 1 over 2, so it would be 1/2, so it has to be g. Now you could plug in 1/2 into the x to find out what the y is, just to confirm that it's 9, but we could stop there because we already know that that's the only possibility. So then let's go to number 13. So it says y is equal to all of this. The equation above is in the xy plane, and b and k are constants. The equation is a parabola with this as the vertex. What is the value of b? Okay, so remember the vertex is going to be halfway in between the x-intercepts. Now you can find the x-intercepts, or the zeros or the roots, whatever you want to call them, by looking at the equation up here. So we can look at our factors, because remember, if x-intercepts means that the y is 0, so we can look at our factors and say, hey, when are those equal to 0? Well, right over here, I see that x minus 2 would be equal to 0 if I plug in 2 for x. So that means that one of my x-intercepts has to be 2, 0. And over here, if I plug in, if I make this equal to 0, I know that x would have to be equal to k. So k, 0 is another one of my x-intercepts. And then I know that this is h, k, my vertex, and I know that this has to be halfway in between those, so I can say, I'm going to use the midpoint formula to say that 2 plus k divided by 2 has to equal the midpoint, 4, right over there, to find out what k is. And that would be 2 plus k. I'm going to multiply each side by 2, and that's going to give me this. 2 plus k equals 8. Subtract 6 on each side, or subtract 2 on each side to get 6. K is equal to 6. So then now we know what k is. And then we're trying to find out what the value of b is. Well, we can do that now because hold on one second. So we can do that now because we have what we can plug in for x and y, and then we just solve for b. So this can also be thought of as x, y, not just h, k. So we can plug in 4 for our x values, and we can plug in negative 48 for our y values. So we could say negative 48 is equal to b times 4 minus 2 times 4 minus 6, and then now we could just solve for b. So negative 48 is equal to b times 2 times the negative 2. So that's going to be negative 48 is equal to negative 4b. So then we divide each side by negative 4, and that's going to give us that b is equal to 12. So it would be b right here. So let's go to the next one, number 14. If its discriminant is positive, then a parabola crosses the x-axis basically how many times? So remember, discriminant is going to be b squared minus 4ac, and when that is positive or greater than 0, that means that we have 2 real solutions. So it's going to cross the x-axis 2 times, h. So let's go to number 15 now. So it says, which of the following is true about this? So again, they're talking about discriminant, so let's use discriminant formula, b squared minus 4ac. So a is going to be the number being multiplied here by x squared, so negative 4, b is negative 2, and c is the number floating by itself. So if we plug that into the discriminant formula, we're going to get that that is negative 2 squared minus 4 times negative 4 times negative 5. And then that's going to be, and this is from up here, by the way, this is going to be negative 2 squared is going to be 4. And then we're going to have negative 4 times negative 4 times negative 5 over here. So then negative 4 times negative 4 times negative 5, that's going to make it 4 minus 80. And then we're going to make, we're going to do 4 minus 80, which is going to be negative 76. So we have it equal to negative 76, not positive. So that's wrong. And then we have that the discriminant is negative. That's right. It has no real solution. So we know that one of our rules is that if this ends up being less than 0, there are no real solutions. So that tracks as well. So it would be 2 and 3E. Thank you guys for liking and sharing the live. So let's go to number 6. Oh, hold on 1 second. I have to do something really quick. Okay, so let's go to number 16. A solution for the equation right here is, so for a lot of the stuff, one trick that I also want to mention is most of the time when you're in doubt with a quadratic, just set it equal to 0, because so many of the formulas need you to set it equal to 0 before you can use it properly. So that's what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to add 1.44 to each side. And that's going to be x squared plus 2.4x plus 1.44 equals 0 because it cancels out on the right-hand side. So now I can figure out what a solution for this equation is, and I can do that by using the quadratic formula. So I'm going to say, again, the quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So I'm just going to plug in what A, B, and C are here. So right here would be A. This is not a pre-recorded live. I'm watching. I'm just not trying to, like, I use these clips later for my TikTok. So if I'm talking in the middle, it's kind of useless to use. But I try to address things in between if I remember. And at the end of the live, I address questions too. So then this is going to be A, B, and C. So then what we're going to do is we're going to plug it in there. And we're going to say that this is negative 2.4 plus or minus the square root of 2.4 squared minus 4 times 1 times 1.44 over 2 times, and then 4a right there. Yeah, math is cool, but it's just a little tedious. So then what we're going to do is that's just going to be 0 inside of your square root. So it's negative 2.4 plus or minus 0 over 2. So plus or minus, whether you add or subtract 0, you get the same thing. So it's just negative 2.4 divided by 2. So it's just going to be f, negative 1.2. Okay, this is for ACT math. What is the axis of symmetry here? Remember, axis of symmetry is going to be equal to negative b over 2a. So a is going to be the number being multiplied by x squared, b is the number right here, c is the number by itself. So it's going to be negative 3 over 2 times 5, so that's going to be equal to negative 3/10. Also written as a decimal, negative of negative 3, sorry. Negative of negative 3, which is a positive, so it should be positive 3 over 10. So it would be C. Okay, so then let's go to the next one over here. 18, suppose a parabola has x-intercepts of negative 4 and 4. What could the equation for this parabola be? Okay, so I'm going to write that out as points. We have negative 4 comma 0, and we have 4 comma 0. These are pretty easy points to just plug in and see which one's correct. So I would just do that. So I'm going to plug in, let's start with negative 4. So if I plug in negative 4 right over here, that's going to be the negative of 16 plus 16, that's 0. If I do the 4, it's the same thing. It cancels out to 0. So this one tracks, but let's check to make sure the other ones don't work. So negative 4, if I plug it in there, it's going to be 16 plus 16. That does not work to get me 0. Because remember, we're trying to plug in the x and then get the 0 for y. if these are truly the correct equation. So now I'm going to plug in -4 over here. So the negative of -4 squared would be 16. So the -16 minus 16, that's not going to be equal to 0. And then over here, I'm going to put that -4 is in here for x. So -4 minus 4 is going to be -8. And then, so that's definitely not going to be equal to 0 because the negative of 64 is not equal to 0. So it has to be f. F and G are not the same. There's a negative in front here. So then let's go to number 19. Number 19 says the quadratic right here is equivalent to, thanks for liking and sharing the live, guys. So for number 19, it says we have this, okay, and it looks like if you just look at the answer, if the answer choices make it look like we want to do the vertex format, for a parabola. So that looks like this. If you have this book, by the way, these formulas are in chapter 4 if you need a refresher. So what we're going to do now is we're going to try to make this look like that vertex form that we have up there. So let's try to see what the vertex is because that's going to help us. The h comma k is the vertex. So the way that we can find h is by doing -b over 2a, and if we look over here, a is going to be 2, b is going to be 7, so it's going to be equal to -7 over 2 times 2, which is 4, -7/4. So let's now plug that in to each of these. Well, actually, we don't even have to plug it into all of them because we could say, oh, we have to have minus h, so it has to be the opposite of this. We have to have a +7/4, so we can automatically cross out b and d. And then I would just plug in -7/4 to see which of these is the correct, the correct equation, like that we get the correct value of what k should be. So I'm going to plug in right over here that if we plug it into the original formula, we're going to say that that's 2 times -7/4 squared. Whoops. Sorry, I'm trying to write a little neater. And then +7 times -7/4, and then +6. So now when we do all of that, that's going to just be y is equal to, that's going to be -1/8. -1/8 right there. So then I thought 4 squared is 16, not 8. Oh, because you simplify it at the end. You get a calculator on the ACT, just so you know, but you could simplify this. You could simplify this by hand if you want to, but it simplifies to -1/8. So, but you're right that 4 squared is 16. So then, what we're going to do now is we're going to see, okay, which of these would give us that the k value, the y value, would be -1/8 if we were to make this into this format right over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, I'm going to get the y by itself so that it looks like this by subtracting 1 from each side and dividing by 8. So if I subtract 1 from each side, it's going to cancel out there. And then I would divide everything by 8, which includes this part right here and all of this, but that doesn't really matter. That's not what we're interested in. And I would see, oh, look, the part that's off by itself, the number off by itself is equal to k, which is -1/8, so that one works. And I would just make sure that c and e don't work like that. So if I subtract 1, cancel out there, I subtract 1, now the number is just -1. We want -1/8 to follow our formula. So it's not that one. And then a similar thing would happen here, except it's just +1, and that's not -1/8, so it's not that one right there. So then it would be A. So then let's go to the next one, number 20. So for number 20, oh, hold on. I'm supposed to be checking my, I'm so bad. The whole point of this is I'm supposed to be editing. I'm supposed to check that my key is not, there's no typos. Hold on. B, A, E, yes, F, C. Yes, okay. So then let's go to number 20. Right here it says we can rewrite this in vertex form. Again, this is vertex form, this equation formula thing that I have up there. So we're going to rewrite it in vertex form. Let's find out what h is. So h is going to be equal to -b over 2a. So a is just the number being multiplied by x squared. B is the number right here. So if we plug that in, we're going to get negative 8 over 2 times negative 1. So that's going to be negative 8 over negative 2, which is just positive 4. So if we plug that in, I'm going to rewrite the formula up here since it's like hard to see up there. So if we plug this into the formula for h, so far we're going to have y is equal to a times x minus 4 squared plus k. So then let's see, we could plug in the 4 just like we did up here into the original formula to figure out what k is, or the y value when we have x is 4. So we're going to plug in 4 for x over there, and that's going to give us that we have negative 1 times 4 squared plus 8 times 4 plus 5 is equal to y, which is also equal to k. So that's going to be negative 16 plus 32 plus 5. And then when we add all of that up, we're going to get that k is equal to 21. So then we should have now, instead of plus k, plus 21 to follow our formula. And we're looking for something that looks like that now. So let's see. If we look at which ones have negative 4 and plus 21, it's not going to be that one. It could be that one, negative 4 plus 21, negative 4, no. So then we're determining whether it's G or H. So then now let's look at what's the difference between these. So if you look at G, there's just a positive, technically a positive 1 out here, and then here there's a negative 1 for A. So remember that A tells you like how it's facing in your problem. If it's facing down or up, like a negative A means that it looks like this one. If it's positive, it looks like this, the up. I remember it like this because it spells up. So then if I look at the original format, A was negative, so it's supposed to remain negative so that I can tell that it's facing downwards. So it has to be H because that's the one that has a negative A out in front, or a negative 1 in this case. Thank you guys for liking and sharing the live. And if you're interested in getting this book, it just released on Amazon, and the information is in my profile. So then let's go to number 21. What is the maximum value of the function above? Or sorry, minimum value is what I meant to say. So here we have 2 terms plus or minus in parentheses times 2 terms plus or minus in parentheses. Another trick also is whenever you see plus or minus in parentheses times plus or minus in parentheses, you should just start foiling. Like that's 9 times out of 10 what you have to start doing anyway. Let me just block someone really quick. Hold on. So then someone asked, does it have an answer sheet? Yeah, it has an answer sheet in the back, and actually all of these get uploaded onto YouTube after, because the whole point is that it's like a workbook with video lessons. Ignore the not for resale. That's because it's like an author's copy. This is an old author's copy. But yeah, it comes with like these as video lessons so that like you don't have to read some vague key and like try to figure it out on your own. You can like just see it in real time really fast. Is the book only math, or does it have other subjects? This is just for ACT math, but I'm working on other books as well. I have an SAT math book, and I'm working on reading and English ones as well. So then let's find the minimum value here by foiling. So FOIL, remember we're going to multiply. Yes, the link to my website's in my bio, which links to the books. So we're going to multiply the first things, which are 3x and 3x. So that's going to be 9x squared. And O is the outer thing, so 3x times negative 4, negative 12x. I is the inner thing, so 2 times 3x plus 6x. And then L is the last thing, 2 times negative 4, which is going to be negative 8. So now we're going to combine our like terms here, and we're going to get that f of x is equal to 9x squared minus 6x minus 8. And then someone was talking about derivatives. The whole point of this is you can do whatever you want, but people usually haven't taken calculus when they take this exam yet, most people. So then what we're going to do now is we're trying to find what the minimum value is. So to figure out minimum value, we can first figure out what the x min or max is. Because when they're asking for x minimum value, they're asking for the y min or max. But if you find the x min or max, you can use that to then find the y min or max. So the x min, because it's a min in this case, is going to be equal to negative b over 2a. So that's b, this is a. So it's going to be equal to the negative of negative 6 over 2 times 9. So it's just positive 6 over 18, which is equal to 1/3, because you divide by 6 on top and bottom, the greatest common factor. So then we get that the x min is 1/3. Now to find the y min, you would just plug in 1/3 and then plug that in for x everywhere in your equation. So you can plug it in here if you want to, but it's going to be, I see right away that it's easier to just plug it in up here because then the 3's will cancel. So I'm going to just plug it in up here, but you could use that one as well. Either one works. So then this cancels out to 1. So then it's just going to be 1 plus 2, which is going to be 3. And then this is going to be 1 minus 4, which is going to be negative 3. So it's 3 times negative 3, which is negative 9. So A. Okay, so then let's go to the this one right here. Number 22, what is the sum of two solutions? So sum of solutions is going to be negative b over a. So it's, don't get it confused with this one. This is different. Sum of two solutions is negative b over just a. But what is b and a is the same thing in terms of like the rules. Whatever's being multiplied by x squared is going to be your a. Whatever is being multiplied by x is your b. So this is going to be equal to the negative of negative 5 over 1, which is just 5 over 1, or 5. So J. Let me just get some water, guys, really quick. Okay. Yeah, like if you know calculus, you can use all those tricks if you want. But again, most people, like the whole point of this is they don't require you to have taken calculus before you take this. Why just negative b over, this is an A, not a 2. This is just A. I know sometimes people think my A's are 2s. That's just how I write them. Sorry. So then let's go, and again, the sum of solutions, the formula is negative b over A. So A is going to be the number being multiplied by x squared, and it's not equal to 0 yet, so we have to do that first. Getting ahead of myself. You always have to make sure that your quadratic set equal to 0 before you use this formula. So I'm going to subtract 12x from each side. And that's going to give me this. So now it's set equal to 0. And now I can plug in what A and B are into this formula. So A is the number being multiplied by x squared. B is the number being multiplied by x. And this is going to be equal to 12, because the negative of negative 12 is just positive 12, over negative 3, which is equal to negative 4. So someone wanted an explanation of what the sum of solutions is. So the sum of solutions is just what it sounds like, the sum, which is the answer to an addition problem, of the solutions. So like the solutions would be what x is. So it's like if you found what x is and you add those two up. That's what the sum of the solutions is. So you could technically solve for x and then do that. Like you could solve for what x is and then add whatever you get for the x's together. But this is much faster. So then let's go to number 24. So it says the graph above shows y is equal to g of x. If m, n, and k are positive constants, then which of the following equations could define the function g? So what we're going to do is we're going to think about the different things that we know about quadratics and parabolas. Same thing. So we know that this is the format of the vertex form of the equation that we're used to. H comma k is the vertex. So h comma k is referring to this point right here. So we could say that our h comma k is going to be 4 comma 7. In this case, so those are both positive numbers. So we could say, like, we could start plugging it into the formula. We don't have to find the exact formula, but it might help you to just visualize it to see exactly what it is. And then we know that this is facing downwards, so that means that A has to be negative, because the rule is that it faces downwards like this if this is negative, this number out there is negative, and if that number is positive, then it looks like this. But this is negative, so that means we have to have a negative out here, so that means it has to be A or D. I mean, I shouldn't cross out this one yet. A or D or E if A and D don't follow what we need it to. So then now I'm going to look and see, okay, what's the difference between these? So then it looks like I need to focus on what my H should be right here, what this number should be. So H should be 4. So if I plug it into the formula, it would have to be looking like this. I need something that looks like this, which means it would have to be A right there.